Marguerite Thérèse Margot Berard, painted in 1879, is an intimate and emotionally rich portrait of a young girl by Pierre-Auguste Renoir, one of the leading figures of the Impressionist movement. Currently housed in the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York, the painting reflects not only the close relationship between Renoir and the Berard family but also the wide expressive range of the artist. The model for this work, Marguerite Thérèse, commonly known as Margot Berard, was the daughter of Paul Berard, a diplomat, banker, and devoted patron of the arts, who was also Renoir's friend and supporter. Renoir first met Berard in 1878, at a time when the painter was reaching a new turning point in his career. Berard welcomed Renoir into his home and allowed him to spend summers with the family, during which the artist created numerous portraits of the family as well as decorative works for the house. This painting of Margot, created in that context, goes beyond the scope of a mere commissioned portrait. It is a work that reveals the intimacy between artist and model, capturing the subtle emotional fluctuations of daily life. In the painting, the 5-year-old Margot is depicted from the chest up, slightly turned as she gazes toward the viewer. Her cheeks are flushed, her lips slightly parted, and her eyes appear moist. According to her nephew, Renoir painted this portrait to comfort Margot after a distressing lesson with her German tutor had left her in tears. In this light, the painting was an act of consolation and affection, less a formal portrait and more a snapshot of emotion. Understanding this background allows us to better appreciate the subtle shifts in her expression, the emotional nuances around her eyes and mouth. Though the portrait may seem calm and balanced at first glance, it captures the tremors of the girl's inner self and the delicate movements of her heart. The color palette also reflects Renoir's artistic maturity and adaptability. Margot's face and hair are rendered in soft tones, as if bathed in gentle light, while the background is composed of muted grays, soft blues, and pale browns. These background tones not only enhance Margot's facial features but also lend an atmosphere of serenity and tenderness to the overall composition. The brushwork displays the lightness typical of Impressionism, yet the rendering remains delicate and appropriate for a portrait. The texture of her hair and the shadows around her eyes, in particular, reveal Renoir's sensitivity and technical skill, which extended beyond Impressionist techniques to include finely tuned portrayals of the human form. The series of portraits Renoir painted of the Berard family can be seen as a kind of familial album. He repeatedly painted the Berard children, Margot, André, Lucien, and Madeleine, adopting different approaches suited to their individual ages and personalities. In Margot's case, several portraits remain from later years, enabling us to trace her growth over time. These are not stiff, formal portraits but warm and natural depictions that seem to emerge from everyday life. At their core is the artist's gentle gaze toward the children, a reflection of his being welcomed into the family as one of their own. The year 1879, when this portrait was created, marks an important transitional period for Renoir. Around this time, he began to step away from the pure pursuit of light and color typical of Impressionism, gravitating instead toward more traditional compositions and clearer outlines in figure painting. This shift was influenced by his growing admiration for classical artists such as Raphael and Ingres. Margot Berard stands at the intersection of these developments, blending the vibrant, airy brushwork of Impressionism with the structure and clarity of classical portraiture. It testifies to Renoir's identity not merely as a pure Impressionist, but as a flexible and diverse artist capable of working across multiple styles and techniques. Margot Berard was born in 1874 and died in 1956 at the age of 82. She was one of the children most frequently painted by Renoir, and her image lives on in his works. To the Berard family, Renoir was not just an outside painter but a member of the household, and many of his works were passed down through the generations before being donated to institutions such as the Metropolitan Museum of Art. This painting presents the theme of family not only to the Berard household but also to viewers as a universal subject. Created as a gesture of comfort, the portrait transcends the category of a mere child's likeness to quietly speak of intimacy, affection, and the healing power of art. At first glance, Marguerite Thérèse Margot Berard may seem to be just a small portrait of a girl. Yet it encapsulates Renoir's deep understanding of humanity, the poetic essence hidden in everyday life, and the transformative power of painting. With this work, Renoir depicts the power of art to turn sorrow into a smile and expresses the essential healing nature of creativity. Margot's gaze seems to speak to the viewer, containing within it timeless, universal emotions, love, comfort, and empathy, expressions of the fundamental feelings shared by all humans.